Monday, we've got the news that Harry Brook is the new England men's white ball captain across the formats, taking over from Jos Buttler. There had been a bit of speculation that Ben Stokes might be leading the ODI side, but that speculation has been put to bed with this announcement. Brook's someone without a huge amount of captaincy experience, it must be said. He did lead the England under-19 side and also the Northern Superchargers in the 100 last year, and he was England captain for those 5 one-day internationals against Australia last September. Is this the right call? Should Stokes maybe have been given the ODI job? Can Brook balance all of the responsibilities across the formats? To go through it all, I'm alongside 2 former England fast bowlers who happen to share a birthday. The BBC's chief cricket commentator, Jonathan Agnew. Former England bowler, Ashes winner as well, Stephen Finn. Hello to you both. Right then, Aggers, first and foremost, have they reached the right call after all the speculation?
Well, I think so. I mean, thank goodness, in a world that seems to have gone mad at the moment, that sanity has prevailed and they haven't given it to Ben Stokes, which I think would have just been beyond bonkers. And that, in the current climate, is saying something. I just couldn't see really any logic whatsoever in saddling that on Ben Stokes' shoulders. You know, he has to be fit for the Test matches. Full stop, as far as I'm concerned. I can't imagine England going to Australia without him as captain. And if he had done something, and particularly if he'd redone his hamstring again, while even playing in a white ball game, I think really selectorial heads would have been on the chopping block. Simple as that. I mean, people, it's a huge year this of Test cricket. It's a very minor year now in terms of white ball cricket, and it's all the focus is on India and then, of course, the Ashes, and people expect England to perform at a very high standard. And I without Ben Stokes in the side and leading England to Australia, I think their chances would be hugely diminished of winning the Ashes. I mean, who would be captain for a start? Who would replace him? You really are going back to basics. So, yes, I mean, sanity has prevailed at least, and it hasn't gone to Stokes. As far as Harry Brook is concerned, look, I don't think it's really anybody else. You go through the list of those who are with England in the Champions Trophy. A number of them, their futures are in jeopardy anyway to get into the side. He's had a go at it. He obviously captained a few games at the end of last summer. He said one or two silly things, but I think he's young. He'll learn. He'll get tutored in how to deal with the media, and good luck to him. He now, the important thing is he's now got a chance to get his head down and get used to the job, which seems much more sensible, frankly, than the alternative.
Finny, what was your reaction when you heard the news?
I think glad in the first instance that it wasn't Ben Stokes that they asked to do it, for a number of the reasons that Aggers has listed there, but a fully fit, firing Ben Stokes with both bat and ball, and a mentally fresh Ben Stokes to tackle these 10 Test matches, or 11 including the Zimbabwe Test, but the 10 that they will be judged on over the next 8 or 9 months or so. I think to have Ben Stokes fully focused on that is a good thing, and I think that this needed to be a young man. This is the start of a new project. This white ball side has a lot of regeneration to go through. I think it needs to re-find its identity, and relying on Stokes and McCullum to carry through that momentum that they built with the Test match team to try and overlay that with the white ball team, I think would be a misstep. So I think this gives Harry Brook a real opportunity to be able to carve out a team in his vein and in his name, and I think that that's exciting for everyone involved with English cricket. I hope that, having been there during the T20 series and the 50-over series in India, and then the Champions Trophy, I hope that the powers that be, including Brook, will realise that none of those teams that they picked looked balanced in any way to be able to compete against the best in the world. So I hope that they realise that in the first instance. But the blank canvas and the ability to reforge something and to push forward in the right direction, I think, is exciting for everyone involved.
Aggers, during the Cowdrey lecture that you can find, by the way, there's a couple of TMS podcasts on BBC Sounds, but you and Michael Vaughan were quite vociferous about your views on the prospect of Ben Stokes maybe becoming the captain. And what interests me is the quote that we saw today from from Rob Key about Brook, and he's always been part of our succession planning, albeit the opportunities come a little bit earlier than expected. I mean, has this fallen as the ECB would have wanted it to after Butler left?
Well, I think the Stoke speculation was almost entirely because Rob Key said we were silly not to consider him. I mean, that's really all he said, and from there suddenly this whole thing sort of blew up into Stokes is going to be captain of the one-day team. I don't think anything more firm has been said about that. The fact that he's not going to be fit enough to start the season anyway, that whether Brook was always going to be the natural successor, I suppose we'll never know, because of course people weren't expecting Jos Buttler to fall on his sword at the end of the Champions Trophy, and maybe one or two other contenders would have come in. But if you look down the list of those who were in Pakistan, as I said, I mean, Salt might not get back in the side, Smith might not get back in the side. Duckett captain, I don't think so. And that sort of rules out virtually all the contenders. Livingston struggling to get in the side, having to fight hard. So I just think that the Brook was the obvious choice. He did it last year. He did okay against Australia. So now he has got time, and that's the point. There's no rushing around. He will miss some series, but he will need his workload managing. Although I can see some old timers chortling at that a bit. But he will have to take some time out here and there just to clear his head. Whether he'll take the team to New Zealand before the Ashes, I suspect, is a moot point. I would doubt it. They're going to get together, and they'll all hit Australia together, I'd imagine. Those who do go on the Ashes, a break here and there. I mean, Brendan McCullum's going to have a break here and there as well. So, there is so much white ball cricket played. Unfortunately, as England discovered, they're not playing enough 50 overs cricket. But there's so much of the short form game. But that's the first World Cup that's coming up. I think if Harry Brook were to miss the occasional series to have a rest, that's not going to be a problem.
Flexibility is going to have to be key, Vinny, isn't it? Because the series almost coincide with each other now in different parts of the world in red ball and white ball games.
Yeah, there's a touch more disparity than there has been because of the COVID backlog that meant that there were a lot of overlapping series and series starting a day after a test series had finished on the other side of the world. I think there's less of that. Which is why Brendan McCullum, I think, was offered and then took the job as the head coach. The fact that that they were less aligned, but I certainly think that making sure that Harry Brook, who is a vitally important cog in that middle order of the Test side, making sure that he is mentally fresh and fit enough to be able to concentrate 100% when it comes to those Test matches is going to be a very delicate yet important thing for the ECB to manage. I think that he will have a good enough relationship with McCullum and Key, having been around the setup and been the vice captain in the white ball side for the last year or so. I think there will be that open and honest dialogue about how he's feeling, and I hope that continues to make sure that still, especially for these 10 test matches against India and Australia, that he remains as fit and focused as possible on those when it comes to it, because ultimately, I do believe that this McCullum and Stokes partnership in the Test match format will be ultimately judged on how these 10 Test matches go over the next 10 months or so, and Brook is a key cog in that.
And it's a weird thing, Aggers, isn't it, that in some ways this news today is going to steal a few headlines for 24 hours or so, but ultimately the wider picture of 2025 is not one that has white ball cricket front and centre, or indeed remotely front and centre, because it is all about the red ball game, and very much Harry Brook is part of that and central to that, and he can speak about the dream of captaining England and everything else. And some lovely quotes today. Real honour to be named the captain. Ever since I was a kid playing at Burley and Wharfdale, dreamed of representing Yorkshire, England, and maybe one day leading the team. But actually, leading the England white ball team is quite almost low on his agenda for 2025.
It is. I mean, it's a case of bedding in, isn't it? Having a look at what the job's about, putting a bit of a stamp on things, maybe. And he was very disappointed in Pakistan. I had a chat with him. I said, I haven't seen you for a while. Harry said, no, because I haven't been scoring any runs. So he hadn't been interviewing me. That was the point he was making. And it's true. He had a poor Champions Trophy there. It's been a very poor start. Let's face it, all round to the year. Yeah, this big year that we're all looking forward to. I mean, including the women in that as well, of course, on their Ashes. Their performance in the Champions Trophy was dire. Two main bowlers out injured. the fast bowlers that they're looking for to build this big year around. We don't know how long well, Mark Wood could be a long time. Cast hopefully not so long. But it's just not started very well. And yes, you're right. There'll be I think there'll be a bit of a conversation about Harry Brook being made captain in the papers tomorrow. But I think it was what everyone was expecting. I don't think it's a surprise that he's been named captain at all. I think it would have been a bigger surprise stroke shock if anyone else had been. So I think they've made the right decision on what they have, and he's now got time to bed himself in and get used to the job.
Does he need to slightly finesse his public conversations, Finney? When I spoke to him at Trent Bridge last year, the quote he gave to me after a pretty abject dismissal was, if you get caught somewhere on the boundary or on the field, who cares? I mean, he did clarify that afterwards, and it's more that, don't get yourself bogged down by playing a bad shot. But what with he and Ben Duckett occasionally saying things that actually don't necessarily go down that well with England supporters. I mean, when you're a leader, you do have to be a little more careful, don't you?
Well, looking at it, Ben Duckett's probably the only other player guaranteed to be in both T20 and 50 over teams. So we could have a Duckett-Brook combination as vice-captain and captain, which is leaving all the written journalists, I'd imagine, licking their lips at the prospect of the quotes that they may get. But yeah, there's certainly an element of needing to play the game, I think, as England captain. I think sometimes you have to keep your cards close to your chest. You can't be as frankly honest as maybe Brook was in that interview with you at the back end of last summer. But I think you do learn as you go on the job. I remember my early days of speaking to the press. You're a bit like a rabbit in the headlights, and all of a sudden your brain's not that engaged, and you're saying things that you don't necessarily mean, and you have to re-clarify yourself. I think he'll deal with the press so frequently as England captain, and especially in the build-up to big series and big World Cups, as there's the T20 World Cup at the early part of next year, just the other side of the Ashes. I think he'll be able to refine his style, I think it's fair to say, and have a better relationship with the press.
But also those comments are the ones that Rob Key was talking about, was it? Those sort of comments that have got to stop. They're silly. But both of them, both instances. I mean, we've heard it before, haven't we? And I think people are a bit fed up with hearing that. And if that really is the attitude of England's players who are losing to Afghanistan and getting knocked out of the Champions Trophy and whatever it may be, then people are going to say, "What is going on in that dressing room?" I don't suppose they talk like that, or perhaps they do speak like that to each other in the dressing room. I don't know, but certainly, if they really are playing with that sort of attitude, then they're not going to have a great year, I don't think. This is a year in which they have to knuckle down. Bazball has been entertaining. It's been good fun. We've had a good, lots of entertainment, lots of shots played. But I don't see it's going to have to be refined. They're not going to win the Ashes by just going out there and having a thrash. They have to play 2-3-dimensional cricket. You can't just go out there and play one way. They've got to be more adaptable than they have been since those two, Stokes and McCullum, got together. They've got to play more intelligent cricket, and I think they've got to say more intelligent things. And I think that was what Rob Key was talking about the other day.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I look back at when Owen Morgan took over the white ball captaincy, and this is a similarly fresh start. England almost at rock bottom, not really competing in any of the world tournaments that they've played in the last 12 to 18 months. And it's an opportunity for a fresh start. And Owen Morgan came in and he had a very distinct idea of what he wanted that team to look like. So powerful openers, steady middle order players, explosive people who could smash the ball around between overs 30 and 50. And then the makeup of the bowling attack. He wanted a left armour, he wanted a wrist spinner, he wanted a finger spinner, he wanted a middle overs bowler who would take wickets. And they went out and they hunted people in those positions. I think what we saw in the Champions Trophy and what we saw especially in the series against India was just an amalgamation of players that didn't really know their specific roles within that team. And I think that will be Harry Brook's first port of call, will be to define himself by the style of cricket that he wants to play. And clearly when he speaks to the press like that, he will want to convey to his players, and I think what he was trying to convey to his players was that he wants them to play with the freedom that allows them to commit to the shots that they're going to play. So in a dressing room, when you come in and you've got out from smashing one down deep mid-wicket's throat, the thing that will make you step off the gas the next time you're in that situation is being berated when you walk into that dressing room. So I think the message that Brook was trying to convey with those quotes was that I don't care that you got caught on the boundary. What I want you to do is hit it over that player's head for 6. And Eoin Morgan got the balance perfectly of allowing people the freedom to be able to do that when he was captain, but also making sure that when they're doing that, it's the right option, if that makes sense. So if you're getting caught at deep mid-wicket, it's against an off-spinner with the ball turning into you, and that is a shot that's in your favour. So therefore, if you get caught at deep mid-wicket, I don't mind, but next time commit to it more and hit it over his head. I think that there's that fine balance between recklessness, which I think we've seen a lot from England over the last 18 months to 2 years with the freedom that they've been given, whilst also playing the percentages. And I think that's going to be the fine balance that Brook has to try and find as captain.
My worry slightly, Aggers, is if that's what he's saying in public and that message is doing the rounds and the criticism starts coming in if teams lose games, you think back to the early days of Eoin Morgan 2015 to 2019. We remember it with rose-tinted glasses that everything was 400 plus at Trent Bridge and wonderful sunlit evenings and everything else. But there were bumps along the way. But what we always had was quite considered, clear messaging, and it felt like a real direction. What you don't want is a sort of slightly chaotic, does he mean what he's saying? What's the message in the dressing room? You don't want that vibe to be received by the public, because the public can then turn when things don't go well on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will learn to speak as professionally, responsibly, if you like, as you play. I mean, I think that it's easy. Perhaps it's not always true, but it's easy to draw a line that, well, if they're saying that's what they're saying in the dressing room, how they're going to play. And I think a lot of the last couple of years with McCullum in charge and so on, I think there has been a lot said in the public that is not said in the dressing room. I mean, I hope that's the case. There are some performances that you look at and you think, what, I mean, look at the last game in that England played in Rawalpindi, for goodness sake. I mean, what a shambles that was. To win the toss and then lose in 2.5 days was pathetic. Then they've got to play better than that. And if people are then coming out and shrugging shoulders, then I think you're generally entitled to say, is this really the way that is this the lack of professionalism, if you like? And I think that's why Rob Key said what he said the other day about the nonsense that's being spoken. It's true. There is some nonsense that's being spoken. They now have to prove, actually, that that's not the message, that that's not the way they play in the dressing room. They've got to be more professional than that. And I mean, I'm sure they are.
We will get on to the comments from Rob Key in just a moment, as well as discussing exactly what sort of a captain he might be. But before we have a little break, I'm going to leave you with this question. I expect you both to know the answer when we come back. He's 26, Harry Brook, so youth on his side. The youngest man to captain an England side was whom? The answer in just a moment.
The TMS Podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Okay then, Aggers, I know you know your history of the game, and I know you'll have this answer immediately. England's youngest ever captain was?
I haven't had time to look it up yet. How old was Mike Atherton when he was captain?
Finny?
That's obviously not the right answer.
Are we talking about full-time England captain or someone who's done a one-off game?
Well, the answer I've got in front of me is just one game, actually.
Okay, I'm going to say it could be, I reckon James Taylor captained in about 2015 when he'd have been early 20s.
Well, I'm surprised that neither of you have got Monty Bowden in 1889, aged 23 and 144 days.
Monty.
In a test against South Africa in Cape Town. So he has got a lot of time, 26 years old. It feels like quite a nice balance, this, actually, Aggers, doesn't it? It's sort of enough international experience, big game cricket, knows his game, but not quite so young that he's necessarily sort of thrust in there before his time.
No, he does know his game. I mean, and the only thing to say, he hasn't been scoring many runs, and so you hope that, I don't think captains necessarily will have an impact on Harry Brook's batting. He just needs to go out there and get some runs. And as you said, just get used to the setup. It's interesting for McCullum because this is the first time he's had a new captain to deal with. He inherited Stokes, he inherited Butler, and so he now has someone who And sometimes that can influence the relationship between the two. The existing one, be it the captain or the coach, is in place, and it's sort of doing things his way, whereas now it's the coach who's in place and wants to do things his way. So whether the captain has to conform a little more to what the coach wants, whether the coach just takes a little bit more of a senior role, that's not really McCullum's style, and I think they'll just try and work hand in hand together. They've both got two similar batting styles as well, after all. So no, I think it's just it's well, as we've said. I mean, there's no one else really.
Rob Key saying a little earlier than expected. Interesting quote that, Finney, isn't it? Because does that sort of suggest that perhaps there is a bit of a feeling that, we are chucking it your way, Harry, maybe slightly before we'd anticipated doing so?
Well, I think the natural cycle of Jos Buttler's captaincy would have probably come to an end at the T20 World Cup next year, whether good or bad. I think they were probably hoping that Buttler would take it through to then, to allow Brook the space to be able to focus on the test matches that we've discussed already. So I think in that regard, that probably led to some pondering whether it was the right time, whether to give Brook the captaincy right now on the eve of such a big test match year. But I think with management and with the support of the people around him, I think they've probably decided that rather than an up and down topsy-turvy year, chopping and changing captains all the time, we're going to give him the opportunity to do as he wants now. And by that, I mean, is develop an identity for the team that will then, if he's not captain, can be pushed through by whoever takes up the captaincy in his place. And I think that that's going to be, I've mentioned the word identity a few times, and I don't usually like it in the sense of talking about cricket teams, but I think that especially in white ball cricket, it's important for the captain to know what he wants, especially from his bowling unit. The makeup of that bowling unit is what is going to win or lose that team games. And I hope that Harry Brook comes into the job with an idea of what he wants and the kind of bowlers that he wants to be able to take the wickets that England need.
Well, what about this workload, though? I mean, first series as captain is the 3 ODIs and 3 T20s against West Indies. That begins 4 days after the test against Zimbabwe, so the back end of May, and then finishing on the 10th of June, 10 days before the start of the India series. It's a busy period as well, but he's got a lot of cricket to play, and managing that workload mentally and physically, Finney, is going to be a big part of the overall equation for England.
It is. In the first instance, I would say it's probably the physical element of it that, I think mentally he'll be so fresh and excited to be leading England, to be able to take the team forward. I can't see that being a problem for this summer. The clash point comes in that New Zealand series just before the Ashes. You would probably want him resting and recuperating and being as mentally fresh as possible and physically fresh as possible for that series down under. But I think for this summer, to allow him to put his plans in place, to allow him to get used to being England captain and what comes with it, I think these series at home in and around the India series will be absolutely fine. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a different captain for that New Zealand series later in the year.
And the India series is the main event this summer, because there's no way of looking past that.
No, I mean it's going to define this summer, isn't it? Entirely, and England have got a lot of work to do, and they'll have all their best laid Ashes plans presumably in place, and whether they're still intact at the end of the India series, we shall wait and see. That's the point. I mean, they could either go bouncing off to Australia having beaten India and everything's going nicely, and they've got their fast bowlers fit and everything's great and rosy. Or, off they go, having been beaten by India, who are a good side, very good side, and with all their plans thrown up in the air. So it's going to be crucial. I mean, inevitably, we know how the media works. Inevitably, people will be talking about Australia during this India series, and I think that's right. Because it is. The Ashes is the most important thing for England cricket fans, and they want to get it right. So please don't have a go at people talking about, well, yeah, but is it right for there or positions or how are they going to bowl? All those sorts of things. It is fair comment But that doesn't mean to say that it supersedes this series against India, which England need to win. They need to perform well this summer. No reckless nonsense. They need to really get their heads down, play well, and win this series, and go off to Australia in the best possible frame of mind.
It says an awful lot about the significance of red ball cricket this year that we've spent most of this podcast about England's new white ball captain discussing the Test cricket that's happening in 2025.
It's beautiful, isn't it? I think I do think people, and I think it's really heartening for the game, especially in this country. I think the landscape's different around the world, but I think certainly in this country that the best players still feel as though they are judged at the end of their career how they perform for England in Test match cricket, and this is a huge year for that for a lot of very big and good players.
Yeah, indeed. I'm going to wrap things up with a little point towards the BBC Sport website and app where we've got this story written up and the comments section is open for business, and always worth having a look through that just to get a little bit of a sense of what people thinking. Here are some of the thoughts that we've had. Trent Bridgeman says, I wish him all the best, but I fear it's a year or two early. Wibble says, usual mistake, pick one of the most important players, burden him with the captaincy, personal form will drop, probably won't be able to compensate with hugely astute captaincy this early in his career. Barmy Britt, the ECB ditched a white ball as an important format and then make their best prospect from the red ball team captain. Makes absolutely no sense at all.
Who else is going to do it?
Well, this is the point.
Who else is going to do it?
This is perfect English. It's sunny outside as well. It's not even miserable and people's moods are dampened.
Who else is going to do it? I mean, find somebody else. Who are you going to give it to?
But is that good enough, though?
He's a good player. I suspect, I hope he's going to be a good captain. What are you going to do? Make him captain a day before the next World Cup? I mean, for goodness sake.
Well, there we go. Look out for the comment section at the bottom of an article on the BBC Sport website and app to get involved in the conversation. And it's always worth getting a little bit of a sense of what people are thinking. There'll be arguments both ways, but that is a little bit of an insight. In terms of other reaction, Ben Stokes has put on social media, yes, Brookie lad. And I think that he's a very popular member of this side, clearly, and somebody that really does fit in very well with what England do. So we know that red ball cricket is going to be the main point in which England are judged over the course of the next 12 months. England do have a T20 World Cup on the horizon, Aggers, and, you know, it's not quite a free hit for England, that tournament. No ICC event is, but it'll be early on relatively in Harry Brook's white ball captaincy, and he can look ahead to that with a degree of excitement, I think, and England can as well, because it does feel like this appointment marks quite a significant punctuation mark, perhaps from the 2015 to 19 side into what is now coming as they look to build back.
Well, I think it's important that they have a target not too far away. You know, it'll focus minds, and they'll be able to see where they're going, won't they? I mean, it's back on the subcontinent again, of course, so that'll bring the usual issues that England have had. Who's going to bowl spin? All those sort of things. But that's you know, way down the line. But no, I think it's a good thing that they've got an early-ish time opportunity to see how they're getting on.
I think opportunity is the biggest word here. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for England to wipe out what's happened over the last couple of years, to get Jos Buttler, the player, back on his finest form, as he is doing currently in the IPL, to have that Jos Buttler available for the England team, and for them to re-find an identity to be able to make them challenge in white ball tournaments again, as everyone wants them to do.
Yep, and we shall see. It is the news I think we largely expected in terms of England's appointment for their white ball side, but it has now been confirmed that Harry Brook will be leading the ODI and T20 side.